All right, so for this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over how to attack the science section. The biggest thing with the science section is making sure that you identify the independent variable, the dependent variables, and the controls. There can be multiple of each one, but it's important to make sure you identify. I usually label them I, D, and C. The next thing you want to do is you want to identify how the independent variable affects the dependent variable. Is it going to be a direct relationship? Is it going to be an inverse relationship? Or is it going to be no relationship at all? So you want to do this by actually drawing out lines, actually showing that representation on the graph. I usually write direct if it's a direct relationship, no relationship if it's no relationship. I usually do like NR, and then inverse relationship, right? One that looks like this. So biggest thing, right? Being able to go through and identify your trends. A direct relationship is going to be a positive slope. A inverse relationship is going to be an inverse or negative slope. And in this graph, we actually kind of see where that shows up with both of them. It's more of a hump that we see for both of those instead of a direct relationship all the way up or an inverse relationship, more of a negative slope. So positive and negative slope kind of corresponds to direct and inverse relationships.
Okay, so 3 studies examined how the volume of runoff from melting ice is affected by wind speed and by the presence of sand beneath the ice. That's the reason why we read the introduction, is because they identify all the independent dependent variables in the first paragraph. Right, how the volume of runoff is affected by. Right, affected by means that this is going to be independent variable and this is going to be independent variable. Now, if it's affected, that means it's going to be the dependent variable. So the volume of runoff melting ice, that's going to be the dependent variable. We should be able to confirm that shortly, but that, at least the very beginning, is the first step of identifying the independent dependent variables. The next thing we want to identify is the relationship between those. In a lab kept at 18 degrees Celsius, control. Runoff was collected from the plastic. Collecting something is going to be identifying the dependent variable from a plastic box containing melting ice. The box was tilted at 10 degrees, that's controlled, and had a horizontal opening in the lower end. After flowing through the openings, the runoff fell into a trough and was conveyed to a measuring device. Again, you're trying to measure it, you're trying to identify the dependent variable there. So this is everything, right, basically being described right here. So it kind of gives you a visual representation of that. Study 1, in each of the first 3 of 4 trials, the following steps were carried out. 30-centimeter deep layer of particular sand, dry sand, was placed in the box. A 30-centimeter deep layer of chipped ice was then placed in the box on top of the layer of sand, so kind of identifying the relationship there. A fan was turned on to blow air at a constant speed onto the trough at the end of the box. For the next 600 minutes, the volume of runoff collected over each 20-minute period was measured. Again, this identifies and confirms the dependent variable. The wind speed was this, and this in the first, second, and third trials, respectively. In the fourth trial, all steps except step 3 were carried out, and so you did not have the fan on. And so that identifies that 2.5, 1.5, and 0 are going to be your independent variables. These are the things you're manipulating. That'll be your independent variable. So we look at this, we have those as your independent variable. I like to go one step further. I like to label each of the lines. So we have 2.5. I've got 1, I've got 0.5, and I've got 0. Over here, 0 is going to be the highest value, and then it kind of goes downhill from there. So you've got 0.5, you've got 1, and you've got 2.5. So like when you identify which one ends first, 2.5 is going to end first, 1's going to end second, 0.5 is going to end third, and then 0 just doesn't ever end at this point. So that identifies the trend. They go up, right? So you have increasing initially, and you have decreasing later on. So you have a direct relationship initially, and then you go and have an inverse relationship once you get to a certain kind of max. But independent, and then your dependent variables. So the time is going to be independent, the wind speed is going to be independent, and the volume is going to be dependent off of those manipulations. Study 2, the second study of trial 1 was repeated. Now, the second trial of study 1 is repeated. We kind of identify what was happening in the second trial. So the second trial was going to be 1 meter per second speed of the wind, but they do clarify that in here as well. And then the second trial of study 1 was again repeated, except step 1 was omitted. Step 1 was this right here. No sand was placed in the box. There's also the 2 trials were shown in figure 2. So that becomes the independent variable, the with sand and without sand. And so what we see here is that without sand is going to go up, but then without sand is going to end earlier than that. So it ends earlier than the other one. So you do have a period of time, whatever, that they could ask a question for, what's the difference in the time? So that could be a relationship too, but without sand and then with sand. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the independent variable. Time is also an independent variable, and then the volume of runoff is going to be dependent off of those manipulations. And so we have everything labeled in this case.
I hope this video helps to clarify how you can make this Uh, I hope that this video helps to clarify how you can specifically help yourself attack the science section in a more efficient manner that'll help you get more points in less time. And that's the biggest thing, right? Making sure that you can be able to finish the test in time, because that's one challenge that students oftentimes struggle with. Like, share, and subscribe.